What's up, Shred Sexies? Welcome back. Death to the Fingers. We're getting into the technical requirements and the rudiment stuff. Thought it made sense to just go right from the sort of the concept of the perfect practice session, the PPS, into essentially what you should be practicing. Now, obviously, for the sake of interest of the video, I kind of ramp it up, obviously, in the shred department later on in the video. So it's a lot more sort of obviously not going to be playable by a lot of people. But the thing is that there's tons of lessons on the internet to sort of reinforce what I'm about to tell you very briefly in this video. Okay, and then you can start with a good lesson there, absorb that information, make it your mission to be like, I want to learn how to do that thing. And then sort of learn to research that topic on your own through YouTube or on the internet at large, and essentially start gathering information and sorting through it so you're like, okay, well, I understand how this works, but not over here. That process, that sort of inquisitiveness is incredibly important for actually being successful at the instrument, because it leads to little doors being unlocked and you're like, oh, look, there's a whole new world over there. And that's how it works. I don't make the rules, man. Don't get angry at me. Trust me, I tried to cheat the system for a very long time, but it doesn't work. At some point in time, you have to accept the basics. And if I'm playing in the key of G major, I'm saying move to the 3rd fret of the low E string, technically, I guess you could say on the guitar, and then play 3, 5, right? And then move to the next string and do 2, 3, 5. Move to the next string and do 2, 4, 5. That's as dumbed down as you can make it, right? Then later on, you're like, okay, that's the 1st degree, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and back to the root again of a major scale. And then eventually it becomes like, oh, that's the Ionian mode, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, and the 1st degree again, of course, Ionian. And once you start graduating up levels in terms of understanding, then of course, everything starts to fall into place. You can be like, okay, this. You're like, oh, that's each one of those positions is for one of the modes. Weird how that works out. So you kind of got to understand there is this process of revelation that you cannot skip over or try to be like, nah, I don't want to do that. If you want to just play other people's music, okay, fair enough. You can easily do that. But when it comes to doing stuff like I do in the video, obviously it takes a little bit more, right? So keep that in mind. Of course, I'm doing it the shred thing, but it comes up to you to be like, I like the idea in thirds and combining the pentatonic stuff, and then just working obviously on decoding the fretboard, which we're going to talk about right now. All right, in the examples, obviously I'm moving around in keys. I'm pretty sure I'm doing B minor at one point. E minor, of course, is another one. I think I do A minor, key of C major, and all the rest of that stuff. But the big takeaway is they're always the same, right? So I'm going to work in G major and E minor because that seems to be everyone's favorite key when it comes to guitar. And so step number one is that you understand that a pentatonic scale, which is the actual sort of music function we're working with, is derived from a major scale. So you take this scale form and instead you take 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and then 1, and that gives you the pentatonic scale. There's the next octave. Okay, so understanding that basic principle it's on you. Go watch some videos on, how to sort of break down the fretboard as far as a major scale is concerned and all that good stuff, and sort of get your theory bearings, because that becomes incredibly important later on. Otherwise, you're just set adrift on the sea of music, and it's not exactly fun because you get lost and then you become discouraged and then it's no fun anymore. Boo. So don't do that. Obviously, what you need to do is just understand. You're like, okay, take this scale, and I drop a couple notes. And here's the big another reveal, not another big one. Maybe it is big, I guess. You can convert it backwards again, right? Which is the next level. Essentially understanding, I can be like, I can fill in that middle note, chromatically speaking, between the first and the second here. And then, of course, add in those major scale notes back to chromaticism. All back into that. Back to chromaticism. Okay, so that's me just basically adding some chromaticism and, of course, putting back in those notes that came from the pentatonic scale. But in the first example, obviously, I just basically moved through the pentatonic scale itself. And that process where I start adding new notes is what I call evolution. You take this scale, and then you add in, say, the major scale notes. So 3 notes on those 2 strings now. And then you move up to the next position. Oh, there it is again. It's that configuration again here. Oh, the octave there, right? Again. Oh, it's always the same configuration in the same order, right? So it's easier to remember. Right, so that's incredibly important. Of course, then you start to be like, oh, I can fill in this extra note. And of course, you start seeing me use sort of patterns and whatnot, and we'll get into that later on. But that right there is really the most important thing with respect to the scale. First, just start by moving through the scale, simply like this. Okay, and you see me do it in the video. First, I just do it straight out. And then, of course, afterwards, what I do is I start to add in those extra notes. Okay, and that becomes very important to understand because obviously that's sort of the way you can diversify the scales and really accent certain notes within the chord that's playing along with you to really take it to the next level. That's one of those things, right? When you're sort of playing this idea, you're like, that note there, it acts as like this pivot point, musically speaking. So people are like, yeah, that's amazing. So that's really important to be able to hit that note, if you will, all over the fretboard and just anticipate it when you're starting to move through the sequence. And obviously, since one of them's in sort of G major, I'm using this template, right? And there's the Dorian position. Phrygian there, right? Mixolydian. I mean, this is the 5th degree of this scale, right? And then, of course, the 6th degree, Aeolian, right? And, of course, all I'm doing there is starting to move through them. That's me going through like 3. There's the first part of the major, right? The next part is, of course, going to be in Dorian. And then, of course, there's the next one on Mixolydian, right? And, of course, I was Phrygian there. So you have to be able to start to see the fretboard. If I was doing it the other way, that's Aeolian, then I can move down to this note here, just because it's in the pentatonic there, right? From Mixolydian. Do it again. Well, that's convenient, right? So again, you also have it, where am I? Down here, of course. Now this one's a little bit more interesting. You can kind of just do this. So just open with that, and then jump into that one, then slide into this. Another sequence. Now, of course, I'm adding the whole step in there, but you're starting to see you can take it from being a little bit more simple and still use just the notes of the pentatonic scale to turn it into something a lot more interesting. And of course, technique and rhythm and stuff where you're starting to, you're not just going, right, this really robotic sort of, no, right? You got to sort of know when to pause on a note sort of situation and then sort of expand out. See that note there is like a good target note, obviously the root, because it makes it feel like my little music idea came to an end, like a sentence. Then sliding them. Again, another sort of like closing note there, but another note of the actual triad that belongs to the 1st degree. So that could be the 3rd or the 5th. I'll leave it up to you to figure it out. But you're starting to get the idea, or the 6th, obviously a minor. I should be careful. I can't remember what note I played there, but you get the idea. There's a music relationship there where you're like, these notes, when I play them or end on them, it always feels like the music comes to a close. This is incredibly important. It stops people from doing... And ending on that note, you get pulled down to this one, right? You're like, okay, I need to end my music idea, not just sit on the 2nd degree like that, which is a really tension-filled note, unless you're going to be like... right? So you can start getting diminished, but I mean, that's obviously a whole nother level. That's my point, is just get used to just being like, I have to get there. If you're going to start with this one, start with a half step below. Okay, because it gives the piece movement, if you will. This is extra stuff, of course, but I'm just slipping it in there because obviously it'll make your stuff sound way better. Just adding that one note. See what I mean? Just one note. Really, just... And of course, it gives you the opportunity to have this really sort of strong musical gravity happening between 7 and 1. Because 1 or 7 is so destable, it pulls towards 1. And this is where the sort of like understanding that when you're playing these scales creatively, like you hear in the improv, obviously it's me sort of using these sort of different ideas now with vibrato and slides. Every once in a while, of course, I sneak in the major scale notes there. Of course, the chromaticism and sequences there. That's 2 strings, right? Basically from the Mixolydian position. Do it faster, maybe one. Oh, why not go higher? Maybe one more. Okay, so listen, man, you can make your life very easy by starting to learn that just a few of those techniques. Down, down, hammer. Which is going to come in handy later on, of course, with tapping. Just saying you're starting to build up a rhythmic sort of like feeling in your hand, if you will, to sort of keep that situation going. Instead of doing picking, now you're going to start tapping or doing double taps or whatever the craziness is going to be. But it all stems from just the idea of this. And over the years, you just get it going faster, right? And you can do 3s. Ooh, I haven't played that one in a while. Right, so I mean, it's all sort of stemming from the same area, but right there is the big one. When you're practicing rudiments, don't just basically go into robot mode and be like, no. Try to make a musical sentence. Okay, doesn't that sound a lot better than just doing the sort of standard stuff? You start off with doing those, right? Then you're like, if I move to the next position, it's this. If I move to the next position, it's this. There it is, Mixolydian. Oh, Aeolian. Start using the names. Oh, there's Mixolydian again. That leads to Phrygian, into Dorian, into the Ionian. And you're off to the races, right? So it's up to you to start off with just the 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1. And then be like, keep that going. And then into the next inversion. Into the next inversion then. Add in the chromaticism and the major notes. And of course, last but not least, doing the sort of sequences. And that right there is basically all she wrote. And it just takes a very long time to develop the control to play it like I'm doing right there. I've been playing for like 40 years. Well, doing music for 40 years, guitar since I was like, I don't know, 16 or 17 or whatever it was. So it's a long time, and I've been spending a lot of time playing. So, you know, that's just a true reality. And listen, I'm nothing compared to a lot of these dudes on the internet. They're absolutely insane. So, you know, it's all relative. I just enjoy playing music. So that's my mindset. Instead of turning this exercise as essentially it's required, right? I try to take these 2 elements, the Ionian position and Dorian, and make it sound more interesting. Right? Still using... You see what I mean? My brain works in like little chunks there, adding each one of those elements, first starting off with the simple pentatonic stuff, then adding in the flavor of diminished there to sort of create the tension. And of course, just finally ending up back at the pentatonic again, all using the pentatonic scale, by the way, except for that diminished arpeggio, like sequences, slides and vibrato, hammer-ons and pull-offs, chromaticism, the major scale. And then get a little more crazy in there, but sorry, I couldn't help myself. Essentially, there it is, but it still stems from the idea. I'm like, there's Mixolydian. Now my mind's like, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. My mind did go there. Like, yeah, go half step up. That'd be cool. No, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Essentially, you know, I'm like, I know where I am, right? So I'm like, oh, there's Dorian. 3 notes per string. It also is the pentatonic there. Maybe an arpeggio. Right, so it all starts here from the 2nd degree, but in the first place, it's got to be this pentatonic. Later on, you'll be like, oh, that's the starting position for Dorian, and then so on and so forth. You're like, oh, look, I can play the minor pentatonic there. Yeah, you can, of course. And you can also do Phrygian. You know what I mean? Like, listen, I get it that most people are like, oh my God, no. Right now, no. Tomorrow, yes. When you start arranging your thoughts to be like this, it can be dumbed down to this. They can be made up into this new scale. And of course, I could just now fill in the blanks. Okay, and that's where it starts. So when you're doing things, don't be like, oh, well, you didn't show me that much of the video. What I showed you was to start getting good at moving between these pentatonic shapes and build melodies. Close enough, right? So you got to build those melodies upstairs in your mind and then start using all the tools together. Now listen, of course, I'm taking it to an extreme here, but it starts off with just doing the simple ones. Okay, so I can keep going all day and stuff like that. And that's the whole thing is like once you start to develop your mind, it's just becomes natural. You get used to doing those big slides. You know where to anticipate. You don't really need to be like, oh, okay, show me the exact lick. Your ears are the guide, obviously. And then you just start combining things based on the systems, of course, the basic one being the pentatonic system. That's why that one's important to just basically sit there. Now, instead of doing this up and down like that, move to the next one, right? That is what you should be doing now if you're at the beginning stages. And of course, afterwards, with all the other ones. Okay, that's a pretty useful little tool again. Fast. ending with a little flurry and Aeolian there, right? So again, all of that stuff incredibly useful. Once you get fast enough, of course, that's hammer-ons and pull-offs, right? You sit there. Classic Rick Graham, he's a bastard. It's hard. It's how. Watch him do it. It's like basically flawless. And I'm not kidding you. I thought I heard him say he uses 13s. I'm like, I'm out. I'm using 10s. I'm just like, holy wow. Holy wow. Okay, so right there. Okay, and last but not least, obviously the tapping thing. Listen, I go crazy with the tapping. I was actually going to break this up into sections, but since I've already done so much, whatever, we're done. With respect to the tapping thing, listen, I'm still just using the pentatonic scale. Most of it, and of course the major scale stuff, right? Or just using the pentatonic. If this is the two notes from this Dorian position, well, I know the tap note is going to be up here, right? So I can just sort of move my finger to place and start with that one. And of course, move up to the next shape, right? Which is going to be the Phrygian, of course, the Mixolydian. So you move up here. Then it'd be Mixolydian and Aeolian, right? And you move up again. And maybe go between them. There's the two notes from, of course, whoops, right? Those are the two notes from Ionian, right? So you get the idea. You can start to go between them and sit there just in one position and start tapping out all of the upper extensions. Another great way of tapping where this hand's not moving at all. You're just basically moving one here. Ooh, a little rough on the accuracy there, eh, boys? Whatever, it is what it is. Okay, so there it is. You don't have to do all the crazy across strings. And you can barely hear them actually at the lower end where I'm doing. Because I suck, that's why. I haven't been practicing it. I've been stuck in Gambali land. Moving up to the next position, right? Moving down. Okay, so very importante. Again, 6th degree there. That's why I knew it was a minor chord and not... I could have done major, of course, but it wouldn't have sounded as cool because I just did a pentatonic, minor pentatonic run. So there it is. Okay, so again, build up from the pentatonic scale, but instead of just doing these static shapes, start adding in the sequences, 3s, 4s. Right? Okay, and when you start doing stuff like that, of course, work on slides, bends, and vibrato. End of sentence. The call. The answer. So there it is. Okay, so basically you got to start to think melodies, musical sentences, and not necessarily just grinding through these scales. That's the creative side. You're like, here's my first chunk right there. There's the next one. The next one. The next chunk, if you're into the scales, right? Arpeggios, 2-string. Oh, A minor. Dorian position. and ending in, of course, Phrygian there, right? So again, notice how I can know the position and then just execute the appropriate sequence of notes based on that position. I'm like, there's the minor. That's the 6th degree. That makes this one Locrian. Of course, into the major scale. Dorian. Of course, Phrygian. That one's evil. Lydian's not so much bad. And so on and so forth, right? So you got to know those positions inside and out. Essentially, you're like, okay, there's the major scale. There's the major scale, essentially. Sorry, the major pentatonic here is first. Then the major scale. And then, of course, 3 notes per string. Keep going. Oh, look, there's Locrian. Oh, that's Aeolian. Oh, that puts me again at Phrygian there, right? Aeolian, minor pentatonic territory. And you keep going, right? That's what a practice session really is you're starting to just basically call out these scale positions. That's Mixolydian right into Aeolian, which gives me these 3 notes from the Mixolydian position. See how I'm using the roadmap? And then I'm like, oh, Mixolydian pentatonic, oh, into the minor pentatonic at B now, right? D major. That's Dorian, oh, Phrygian, Dorian position, into Ionian again. Minor pentatonic or Aeolian, Mixolydian. Oh, look, I'm back into, yes, the Phrygian position. And ending in the minor pentatonic again. Okay, there it is, end of the video. We'll get into sort of more of the major scale stuff next week, or the next sort of video. I think it's in on Sunday, I guess. And we'll just keep going on with this until we do some arpeggio stuff too, and we do this. But of course, in this case, concentrate on fully filling out the pentatonic scale with this chromaticism, with these major notes. Work on your sequences. And then, of course, you can also do 3 in 1. I didn't really talk about it. You see me do it, of course, again. And, of course, the target notes there. Don't forget about that. Shoot for those target notes. They're going to sound awesome. Bring your musical senses to an... Oh, look, the A type there, or kind of going backward with the C there, right, of course. And then, of course, you're like, oh, that's a G major. Okay, that's awesome. So that stuff right there starts with the minor pentatonic scale, but, of course, breaking up the monotony of just going up and down, and instead start playing it all over the fretboard, however you see fit. I bet you haven't really tried doing stuff like that, and that's just it. You can be like... with groups of 6 ending it there, right? So there it is. You got to basically start to be your own driving force with respect to your learning process and be like, well, yeah, that really appeals to me. If you're doing force, right, of course, we already talked about the sort of hammer-on pull-off deals, but of course you can just start to do that with, of course, on the highest string with inside and outside picking, right, or essentially economy picking. So again, another variations with the 3 in 1. So you're down, up, down, down. Oh, sorry, down, up, down, down. I can't say it and play it at the same time, but I got these downstrokes all in a row, right? And then of course, Oh my God, I can't believe that. My brain's just like, nah. So, you know what I mean? I can't talk and play it at the same time. I have to concentrate because I'm actually working on those ones again myself because it's been a while since I did that. And I'm like, wow, this is actually a really great tool. So, you know, everybody sort of ramps up and stuff like that. Sometimes you get lucky and all the rest of it, but just think of your pentatonic journey like that. It's not just a static scale. Try to inject some life into it. And try to create musical sentences. That's the creative aspect. Okay, and you'll be much happier in the long run because you'll just be able to create great music. And it doesn't have to be overly technical. Remember that. I played lots of passages where there's barely any shred at all. And that's just as important as the shred stuff. And of course, just start incorporating more complex ideas as you can. Right. Wow. This is a monster video. Whatever. The rudiments part is incredibly important, so I'm glad I could just kind of run through this stuff. You saw it right there. Normally that would be without me talking. I'd just be working on things like that, and I'd incorporate more complex things with sweeps and all the rest, even though I did a few. So you know what I mean? And sort of work on other rudiments as well, like interval scales, but we'll talk about that in the next sort of video. So thanks for joining me. Appreciate you guys. You know it. I'll see you in the next one.